Usually you don't need to do the research work. You just do reflection or summary. Those are called report. Usually it's 5 to 10 pages. But when we talk about the term paper, it's 10 page plus, usually around 15 pages, and it involves research work, which means that you should express your own idea and your own reflection and your own study result in that paper. So that's what the term paper is. And then we have what we call research paper, usually a doctoral or master thesis. These research papers in America, if you continue to study in American system, it does require some of your creative reflection or creative idea, your own idea. So that's what the thesis is, especially when you're doing the doctoral work. It's going to require that. So that's kind of a very brief explanation of these papers that you are going to write in American schools. So anyways, going back to the term paper, students are required to submit a critical discussion term paper on one of the class topics by the end of the last class. Any paper submitted late will have 10% of total grade points decrease every week. So the paper is a basic academic research work. It says research work. And the 10 to 15 pages, letter size with the double space and the font size 10. And you should follow the rules and the regulations and the guidelines of a term college or university term paper. So that's for the master students. And non-master students, you are going to do a report, which is 10 pages or less, with the same one of the class topics, but it doesn't need to be a critical writing or research work. If you can do it, that's fine, but I'm not going to require it. So that explains what you need to do to get a grade in this class. And if you're, most of you are, I'm sure that I-20 student visa, and if you are trying to fulfill that visa requirement, these requirements need to be met. You need to pass the class. If you don't pass the class, then you'll need to retake it. So I just want you to pass this class, and 61 plus, which only requires you to be here on time and stay 2 hours, and then 10 weeks of attendance. So that's not something very difficult. So that's how I grade, and 60 under, including 60, that was going to be failing grade. And above, you have this A, B, C, D. Okay, now, so much for the syllabus, and then now we are going into the actual study of Christian education as philosophy. So the study one, we are going to do initiating the discussion. So when you are trying to learn something, there's what we call introduction in English language. Introduction means you're kind of going in as a initiating, as opening, as a first step. So this introduction is the key to any academic work or pursuit that you are trying to have. So before we begin this introduction, I'm going to hand out the attendance sheet. Okay, those who are the first time in my class, who are the first ones with my class? Anyone? First time? First timer. Okay, then you know what to do. So in and out. Please do not sign out yet. Just sign in. And then also please print your name at the first blank, big blank here. Please help me to be able to read it. Some of you just write like handwriting, not printing, and I'm not able to know who you are. So please print with the, I wrote in Chinese 정자. That's how we write in Korea, but you know, you will probably know that Chinese letter here. So please print your name and then check the first week, which is July 7th, and only in. And also, this is a Christian school, and I'm a pastor. And one of the things that we teach for all Christians, you need to be honest. That's what we call in America integrity. This integrity is a very most important thing if you try to live in America. Whether they are white, black, or Asian, whoever who are born and educated here in America does know, they know integrity is most important thing in America, in American culture, in American society. So please do not cheat. And I'm sorry to say, but you know, including my country, South Korea and North Korea, of course, but South Korea, when we grew up, integrity wasn't that big issue. You can lie, and you can gain the things that you want to by lying or cheating. That was kind of okay, as long as you are not caught. But since we are in America, we want to follow the rule in America. I think it's Paul who said, when you're in Rome, you follow the Roman culture. Same thing. So please do not cheat on yourself or for someone else. There were some few students, probably 2 or 3, who signed for someone else. And I kind of know, I mean, you cannot change your own writing. So if that happens, I'm going to fail both of these people who signed for another one and then the person who signed it. So I already clearly made that, and I'm going to repeat this, but please be honest. Okay, so go ahead and assign your attendance. Okay, so there are 2 columns, in and out, for the morning session. I mean, the first session, just sign in, okay? Study 1, initiating the discussion. There are about 5 topics that we are going to discuss in study 1, and we begin with the education within our context. The word context, okay, if you're not familiar with the word context, please Google it and try to find it in your own language, what it means. In Chinese, I think it translates as a 상황. That's Korean pronunciation, but probably similar in Chinese. 상황 means as something in the surrounding or the what's around you, or the situation. Sometimes it means situation. So that's, please Google it, and I want you to understand this term context in your own language, so I'll be able to communicate. Without having to have the definition or understanding of the context, because I'm going to use this term context many times in this class, and I want you to know what it means. Okay. So regarding the context, anyone who are in here, I mean any human being, we are in the context. Another word for context that I use would be in Korean pronunciation for the Chinese word for reality is 현실. Probably similar in Chinese pronunciation. So the reality and the context, that's what we are in. Some Christians, some believers try to disregard the reality and context and try to live and create the text. Text is something that who you are, or what you are comfortable with. Usually, as family, it's going to be your text rather than context. Or you yourself, as a person, as a human being, can be a text. So text is within the context. So again, the word context, it says what is surrounding the text, that's context. So that's the concept. This is a very important for the Christians, or you as a person who are trying to live and exist. So this is a very important framework, or another word, paradigm, that we need to put into your mind, and how we perceive, or another word, perspective. So in my class, I try to help you to build your own perspective, but doing so, I try to present biblical perspective and the perception or understanding, or how you see and view the things that are around. So basically, by building this paradigm or the structure or framework and how you perceive the world and reality, then we can go on into the principles and then practice. So without having this solid framework for understanding your reality or your context, you will not be able to be a very organized or systematic person or student. Probably the 90% of population live without having this solid and organized system of understanding. Even though 100% all the people, all the human beings do have certain perception and perspective in understanding the surroundings or the reality or the context. Yet, it is very difficult, or it's not usual for someone to have very systematic and organized framework in understanding the surroundings or context or reality. So what I'm trying to help you before we go into actual discussion of a Christian education or the philosophy of Christian education, the philosophy basically is having to have or building this framework or paradigm and put the value onto that framework. So that's what we are trying to do at the beginning of the class. So trying to put the value in means which is good, which is the best, which is bad, which is worse, and these are the value system. And then we are trying to put the value to the things that we see or what you know. So, okay. So this is one of the most common contexts that we know when we say education. Education. So education does happen usually and mostly in the school classroom setting. So the design of philosophy of Christian education, when we teach in this like Christian schools, Christian colleges and university and seminary, it kind of presupposes that you are at least a teacher in the Sunday school in church Sunday school, or the teacher, or going to be a teacher in a Christian schools. That's not the case in our students, but the design of this class work, the syllabus and the curriculum is regarding these possible or now Christian school teachers. So this is most popular context that we are going to presume when we are doing what we call Christian education or philosophy of Christian education. So please understand the contents and the curriculum does presuppose this as kind of presumption. This will be more like in a business setting or the university or college setting. So it does happen. So we are we're doing what we call Christian education here, right here, and so I'm teaching, and you are learning about the Christian material, and then the subject happens to be Christian education. This would be one of the contexts that you may think. So you are in the Christian education context right now. So that's what the reality and the context for you and me. So these are some of the places of the education, in general education, not just Christian education, but any education should and may and do happen in our lifetime. So as you live, any human context, it does give you a learning opportunity, and it does demand you to learn. Whether you're watching a news or whether you're watching a World Cup soccer game, all these things do have this educational elements in it. So anything that us human beings are doing, it does come with learning as a part of it, or sometimes as all of it. That means we learn anywhere, anytime, all throughout the life. So the education is an ongoing process that you and I cannot avoid. There's no way that we can avoid to learn. So learning is elsewhere, anytime, as an ongoing process. So that's how we define the education. Education is a learning process. Whether it's a formal, whether it's informal, whether it happens in a classroom, or whether it happens at your home, as all the learning process is considered education, and thus, and in human context, it does require us to learn. The culture. The culture is one of the key components that consists the context that we are going to talk about. So the culture is one of the major part or element, key element, constructing, making the context. So when we are looking at any context or human context, the culture is one of the primary and very core and probably the most influential element that provides education to you. What I mean by that, if you're born in China, the culture, Chinese culture itself, is continue to teach you what the life is about and how to live and what to do and what not to do. And constant knowledge from the culture is given whether we like it or not, whether we are aware of it or not. The culture continues to give us these information, the knowledge, in the name of culture. Usually we are not aware that we are learning, but we do learn probably the 80-90% of the learning from the culture that you are in. So that means where you are born and raised will give probably 80-90% of education that you need to have or need to learn as a human being. So the culture and society goes together. So socio-cultural or culture and society, that is one of the major component that constructs or gives and provides you any sort of learning, if not all. So understanding and analyzing one's cultural background will help us to understand, you as a teacher, me as a pastor, or you as a leader, by learning someone else's cultural background, it's going to tell probably 89% of that person. So that's how important that culture is. Then within one's life, the place of education in one's life, if you have been studying this far, you must be in the elementary school, then junior high or middle school, then high school, then the college, and some of you are doing the second college and or more. So me myself had to go on 2 high schools, and because I moved to Africa and I started over again. So 2 high schools and 1 university, 2 masters, and then 2 PhDs. So these are continuing formal education, but informal education also continues to happen. So both formal education and informal education is gonna make who you are. And without those education, you're gonna be unlearned or ignorant, to be little harsh. So if you're ignorant, if you don't have the knowledge and the sense and the ability, then you are going to fall behind. That's how it is, especially in a capitalism system like America or elsewhere, even in so-called socialist countries or societies. If you are unlearned, if you're ignorant, if you're unable, which means you are lacking education, then you're going to fall behind, which as a consequence, you are going to remain in the lower structure of the society. I'm not going to pass this judgment on the value of the so-called lower spectrum of the society. Some people say it's low because it's not valuable. I don't think that is true. But anyway, just with the common knowledge, you remain in that lower structure of the society, which deprives you from all the good privilege and opportunity. So again, what I'm trying to say is education, and especially in modern society, not only the modern society, it was more important in the ancient society. If you're not learned, and you were considered as nobody and a slave and all these things. So, but in this modern society, 21st century global society that we live in, education is the key. And for us Christians and believers, or in other religious context, whether you're Catholic, Muslim, it doesn't matter, especially when you are having those so-called religious society, this religious education is more important than other cultures or other society. So if you're a Christian, and if you want to be a serious believer, this Christian education is a must, whether it happens in a church setting or church context, or Sunday school, or just Christian schools. It is important. So that's the importance of the place of education in one's life. Now we are going to begin to look at some of the fundamental basis for trying to understand the education in general and prehistoric. According to some of the social evolutionists or evolutionists, they believe that the human beings are developed from chimpanzees and all these so-called apes to human being. And us Christians believe God had created Adam and Eve, and then from that first generation of human being that we became into existence. Whichever you choose, we do agree, whether you're Christian or non-Christian, the education for human existence, human being, did exist as long as as much as ancient as the existence of a human being, which means human beings existed, and from that point of existence, whenever there were, education came along with it. So the education was there in the history of human existence and on, which is true even for the animals. If you raise a pet or the dogs or cats in your home, you know these animals do educate their babies. So education is with these animals as well. So the learning is not only for the human beings, but it's for also animals as well. So that's the basics of the reality that we live in. Okay, let's take a 10 minutes break, and please come back all right. Okay, let us continue our learning and discussion on Christian education. So we were discussing prehistoric context of education. Now, in the beginning, we are focusing on how the education initiates our existence. Existence. This is another word that I want you to be familiar with, because I'm going to use it very often, and it's one of the major concepts if you're in my class. So existence, it means that you are living, ongoing living. So we exist, meaning we are alive. We are living. So when your existence begins, as soon as your existence begins as a human being in your mother's womb, in Chinese, this is concept that you learn as a very baby, inside your mother's womb. And the Chinese character that means teaching a child or the baby in mother's womb. So this is a very important concept for the many Asian cultures, especially those cultures are influenced by the Chinese Confucius ideal, or the ideology, that there's a very focus and emphasis on how a mother should behave and think and eat. Because we believed that these things will influence the baby as it grows in mother's womb. So we believed the teaching and learning begins as that cell, or the baby to born. So it's the learning does not begin after you're born, but even way before 9 months prior to your birth. So that's the concept, and similar and very similar concept is in the Bible as well. So the Christians believe the education of a person as a Christian begins at the very at the point of conception. Especially if you're familiar with the Jewish culture, the Jewish mothers read the Bible to her baby or babies as soon as they find out they are conceived. And this reading of scripture continues 9 months daily for any devoted Jewish mother. So the fundamental Jews continue to do that, and then the similar practice is also with the Christian mothers. So in many Western cultures, so-called Christian cultures, they read the Bible to their babies. I mean the babies in the womb. So the point of conception is the point of Christian learning. Then in the book of Genesis, the first book in the Bible, first book in the Old Testament, you are going to find out very key principles regarding Christian education. When we say Christian education, there are some Christians think or believe that the Christian education has to do with the New Testament only. But that's not true. There are many fundamental and the solid foundations and principles that you are going to find in the Old Testament, and more in the Old Testament than in the New Testament. Especially when you read Proverbs, for example, there are very key principles that are written in the book of Proverbs. And that's a book of wisdom. And if you're a believer, if you're a Christian, the very foundation and the fundamental of spirituality is, and the education learning is the spirituality, and the key and core of spirituality has to do with the wisdom. In the Greek language, it's Sophia. So the name Sophia is same as wisdom, and in Chinese character, in Korean we write jihe. So that wisdom is the fundamental to any education, and the Genesis in the Old Testament, the Proverbs, it teaches us what the wisdom is. So if you have the knowledge, but if you don't have the wisdom, then you do not have true learning. So the true learning, you need to, or you must understand and have not only the knowledge, but the wisdom that goes with it. So there are 3 dimensions of learning. If you read the Bible, there are 3 levels of learning. This is especially you find this in the Old Testament and especially in Proverbs. If you read the Proverbs carefully and repeatedly, then you will come with these 3 words again and again. And especially when you read the Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31. It focuses on the wisdom. But in other Proverbs, it repeats talking about the knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. And these are 3 categories or levels of learning. So this is a very important, that's why I wrote in red. I want you to know and remember these 3 elements or the levels or domains of learning. And this applies not only to Christians, but if you're one of those with the so-called Abrahamic religion, Judaism and Islam and Christian, we do share this very 3 different domains and levels of learning. I think this would be the common for other religion as well, whether it's Hinduism or Buddhism. We use, all the religion use these 3 words to indicate the domains of learning. And knowledge is good to have, but without understanding, knowledge is not useful. Understanding helps the knowledge to become useful, but without wisdom, you are going to use it. You may use it in the evil or bad ways. So the wisdom helps us to make knowledge profitable, beneficial for human existence, not only for yourself, but for others. So if your knowledge and if your understanding to benefit others or to serve others, then you need to have that wisdom. So the Bible basically teaches us you're going to learn, you're going to have knowledge, you may have understanding, but you want to use it not only for yourself, but for the benefit of others. So that's all the learning has to do. And any good learning, any good educational institution, whether it's a religious or just schools, academic, doesn't matter. We learn to help others or to benefit others. So any learning that is selfish is not biblical. Again, I'm saying the Christian education, the philosophy of it says you learn so you can help others by using your ability, your talent, your time, your effort. You're doing it, giving it time and paying the money and being here as a student so you can help others. It seems so unlikely for the modern culture and the modern secular teachings say, you're doing it for yourself. And if it benefits you, just go ahead and do it. And that's kind of ethics and morals that now the secular, the teachings or secular philosophy teaches us. But the Bible says, no, that's not the case. You're learning and you're giving time and effort and all these things, so not so you can become famous and powerful and rich. That's not what we are, who we are, but you're doing it to serve and help others who have less, or who are unfortunate, or who are weak, and who are sick. So that's why we are doing this learning and education. So when you are a teacher and leader in a church, or as a parent, first thing that we are going to teach our kids or our students is the wisdom. Wisdom says you are not living or existing in this earthly existence not to feed yourself or to make yourself rich or famous or powerful, but you are doing it all for others. So that's the wisdom. And unfortunately, even many Christians are not, they are without wisdom, but they go to church and they participate in worship and they pay the offerings so they can become more wealthy, rich, and powerful and famous. So when that happens, the church is no longer a church. And the pastors and leaders, we need to emphasize and keep teaching that you're coming to church and you're being a Christian, not just feed yourself and become selfish and self-centered, but you are doing it for others, to serve them. Because that's what God wants us to be and wants us to do. So that's the wisdom. And Genesis, when you read in the beginning of the whole Bible, the whole human generation, it emphasizes you are created, you are there, so you can serve others. We'll look into the actual verses later on, but that's what it is. Now, next theme that you want to remember as a believer, as a Christian, when we're thinking of education, the philosophy says the family and village. There's a word, it takes a whole village to raise a child. I mean, there's the proverb, I don't know where, but as somewhere in the Europe says, it takes, Africa actually, not Europe. In the African proverb, it says, it takes a whole village to raise a child, which is very true, and the Bible does teach that. And in the Bible, it emphasizes the place of a mother and place of a father as an educator. You are the parents, either whether you're a mother or father, your main job as a parent, as a father and mother, is not only provide them with the food and shelter and what to wear, but more important than these survival care, it is teaching them about existence, about their life. So if you fail to teach your child as a parent why to live and how to live as a human being, then you are failing as a parent. Unfortunately, that happens in the very modern society. I don't know about other cultures and other countries, but I do know about America and Korea. And the education becomes more of teaching how to be the top person so you can live a very safe and comfortable life. That wasn't the education that we know of, we knew. but the education did change so fast and so drastically. It's a very different setting. There's the Korean drama that became very popular just recently in Netflix. And in Korean, the title is a True Education or True Teaching, but it's a different title in Netflix. But that kind of shows what's happening in South Korea. I don't know about North Korea, but it does shows exactly what's going on in Korean education system. It's not the system so much, but it's about the philosophy. Because they teach you should be the best. You should be the top. And you should be able to put others under your feet. And being a mother and father, it is pretty difficult for you to teach something else. But if you're a Christian, you're a believer, we are obligated to teach them this wisdom, God's wisdom, and the knowledge and understanding, which is very contrary to the teaching of the secular schools or secular system. So again, it is very key and important to be the Christian father and Christian mother at your home, and that's where all the education begins. There are some Korean parents that I had dealt with in the Korean American church context. They try to blame the pastors and the teachers in the church for the wrongs of their children. But from my own experience, many years of experience as a minister in a church, 90% of who these children are is their parents. So if you look at the children, you can kind of guess what their parents are like. And 9 out of 10, I'm very correct about it. So if you look at the child, you can tell about their parents almost exactly. So that's how important the parents are in Christian education. It's not the Sunday school teacher, it's not the pastor, but as the parents, most of the cases, these parents are Christians. Of course, there are those non-Christian parents who are sending their kids, child to the church, but in this Korean American church context, most 90% of the kids that are coming to the church, their parents are, at least one of the parents are the Christians. Place of community, it takes a whole village to raise a child. Again, it's an African proverb, which is so true. It does teach us the principle. It's not just the one teacher who is able to educate a child, but it takes many of us together. Then, of course, there's a teacher. So there's a term, what we call lifelong education. The word lifelong education usually is used and applied to the education like of the school education. But this is so true for Christians. The Christian education is a lifelong education. It's an ongoing process. So you don't stop to learn if you're a Christian, if you're a believer. it continues lifetime. Because the reason for, because it is a lifetime learning are two. Number one, it's a lifetime or lifelong process because there is what we call basis or basics. Sometimes people, even the leaders and teachers, disregard or forget about the basics, or the importance of basics. But as a pastor and minister for many years, I do know the basics are something that you want to continue time after time after time, because we easily forget about the importance or the contents of the basics. When you kind of think you're doing well, you're grown and you're mature, you kind of forget about the basics. It's a tendency. It's a human tendency. So we need to not only focus but repeat the basics. So that's why it's going to be lifelong. We are forgettable. Number two, there's always new things to learn. You're not going to be able to learn everything and all things, because God is almighty, is omnipotent, is omniscient, is huge, and he's big, and he's deep. You will never be able to learn everything about God, because the theoretically, when you learn everything about God, know everything about God, then you are God yourself. So theoretically, that's not possible. And there's not, even if you are one of the best and the most learned Christians and most pioneer and mature Christian, even then, you are probably 1,000 of God. So you're nothing, even with the best of you and best of Christians that you expect, you're nobody. So that's how it is. So you continue to learn because there's always new things that you need to learn as a believer. So the concept and philosophy regarding Christian education is it's going to be a lifelong process and continuing time after time and the day after day and year after year. So you continue to learn all throughout your life, and that's how we perceive and regard the Christian education to be. Next topic, second topic would be the introduction would be education, its definition and concepts. I've already pretty much explained some of these definitions, but we'll continue to look into this definition and concepts. Regarding the definition and concepts, I again emphasize, if you're doing any academic work as a student, the academic learning, always we begin and start with defining the terms, the vocabularies that we are going to use in this classroom. So without having to have the same understanding and the concept on the certain key terms, then we're probably not able to communicate. So the exact and correct communication, it is key thing and important that you understand all the key concept and the definitions of the word that we gonna use. So begin with the defining education. And word education, what we say etymological meaning of education. What I mean is the word study. that the word etymology, it means the study of the word, the vocabulary. Okay. So this is what we call word origin. When we are doing any etymology, then always we begin with the origin of the word. Because we did not invent, some of the words that we use, we do invent. And some of the words are very recent. For example, computer, we didn't have the word in 19th century. But in 20th century, that's the new word that we begin to use. Or Bitcoin, there never was a word in the 20th century. That's a 21st century word that we had invented and used. So any word, the vocabulary and terms that we use, there was a beginning. What the problem with these vocabulary and terms are, the word does change. Change its form sometimes, change its meaning. So the word change as we pass by the time. So the time makes the change of the word. And as people change, the concept and the meaning of the word change. But to understand that those changes, then we need to go to the very original. Sometimes it's impossible, but we do our best as scholars, as a student, try to find the very likely, most likely meaning of the word in the beginning. So this is what it is. So it says mid-15th century. So it's going to be 1600 or beyond. Education means bring up children to train, which came from the word educatus in Latin. So it is, as it is the Chinese characters that we use in much part of the Eastern Asia, Latin was the common kind of written language that were used in the most major part of the Europe. It's like today's English. So the English word is more like a global language that we use, even though our pronunciation may be different from part A to part B, but the word itself is very global. So Latin was the global language for the Europeans, especially those what we call Latin America, where the Catholic became the major religion or the main religion for the whole Europe. So the Latin became the very common written language, not the spoken language, but written language. So the educatus, they adopted in English, and they said educatn in I think it's in German, or the the Celtic language. So educatn is a very beginning form of the language, the education, and it meant, the meaning of the word educatn is a bringing up and to train. So the concept of education goes back to that original term, and we know to bring up the child or to train them. So Christian education, again, if you try to define it, bring up to that certain standard. For us Christian, what is the standard? It's Christ Jesus. So the Christ Jesus is going to be the standard to bring up anyone, not only the child, anyone to that standard, which is written in the book of Ephesus, as Paul, Saint Paul or Apostle Paul writes to the church of Ephesus regarding this Christian education or Christian upbringing. So you're bringing up to the standard of Jesus Christ. That's the concept of Christian education. And to train and to equip, another word is equip a Christian, a believer, to perform his or her given talent as a steward or a stewardess of God. So there's a two-part from this word regarding the education. It's a very basic framework that I'm going to repeat again, but I'll just introduce here. So in any education, there are two parts that are basic to our agenda or goal. To when you're trying to educate someone, as a Christian, there's a being part and doing part. Bringing up to the standard of Christ Jesus is more of being, while to train and to equip them to perform, to act, to exercise is a doing. So being and doing goes together hand in hand. Some education focuses on the doing part, and that's a mistake. Again, that's a mistake. We need to balance doing and being, so you can become a balanced Christian. Another word, the word of education is derived from the Latin word educatio, which means a breeding or bringing up or rearing. So all this English translation, breeding is when you have the animals that you raise at the home, like cows or horse or sheep, you say breeding them, which means making them to multiply. So the education also has this sense, the word meaning has a kind of multiplying or making the same figure as the father or mother. So breeding is a bringing out the same quality and nature of the original one, which means for us Christians, again, this copying or the making the very similar quality and quantity as Jesus Christ. So you are becoming a child of God, or children of God, or the sons and daughters of Jesus Christ. So that means breeding Christian into the exact or similar copy of who Jesus Christ is. Again, it has a sense of bringing up, we already rearing, the same thing. So that's basically the concept of education. It has to do with raising a child to become a mature adult or into adulthood. childhood. So when you're hearing the word education, then you associate to the child rearing. The word English rearing or bringing up, it has to do with raising a child. So from a baby to the boy to the adolescent and to the adult. There are several stages, right? So the same thing with the Christian education. Christian education is not sitting down in a classroom and giving them the knowledge and then help them to repeat the knowledge. That's not what the Christian education is. It's more like a bringing up the child. Okay, let's begin. So if you have not came in the first session of the class, please skip that, leave it blank, and sign only the out, okay? So again, here's educare, to bring up or to nourish. It also educere means to lead out, to draw out, or eductn, the act of training or teaching, and so on. So these are the original Latin words that are associated with education, and just don't remember, you don't need to remember that part, but to understand, to bring up, to lead, and to act, the act of training or teaching. So that's what the education is. Okay, in Chinese we write that. The word kyo, that's, I'm going to read in Korean pronunciation. Kyo, it means to teach. Yuk means to raise or bring up. So that's what the education concept is in Chinese character. So according to the Century Dictionary, it says educare of a child is usually with a reference to the bodily nurture or support. So you need to grow up, mature in quantity. That's a sense of educere or educare. And then another word, educare, educare refers more frequently to the mind. So the body, the mind, and the spirit. These are the three dimensions that education need to deal with. Referring to the original, the word meaning. Says a third point. There is no authority for the common statement that the primary sense of the education is to draw out or unfold the power of the mind. So the education, it has to do with one's mind. Mind is more than brain. So it's something that is beyond the brain. So keep having the knowledge. Knowledge has to do with the brain, but the mind has to do with understanding. And the wisdom has to do with your spirit. And if the education only limits itself to the knowledge, then you are not having a successful education. In other words, you are failing to educate someone. But unfortunately, even some of the churches that we see today are focusing on the knowledge, and they never teach or rarely teach them about understanding, and then probably lacking the teaching of wisdom. So when that happens, the church is not doing its role. It would be the same for any Buddhist temple or the synagogue or mosque. Whatever these institutions are with the religion, we are to, all the religions, we need to teach the wisdom, the spiritual domain. And if we lack the understanding and the wisdom, then it's just like a school. Today's school, they don't teach these understanding or wisdom, especially the American schools. When you go to school, they intentionally removed this understanding and wisdom from their curriculums. Because they believed, the American education system, it believed the state and religion need to be separated in schools as well. So the schools no longer posting the 10 Commandments the American schools used to have, even the public schools used to have this 10 Commandments in front of the school, but not anymore. And the prayer is banned in the school, and it's only allowed to a certain circumstances, to certain people, like the Christian club. If you're a member of a Christian club, then you can have a prayer on the campus. But other than that, the praying on the campus in the name of any religion is prohibited in most of the public schools in America. Probably it's not the case in the Texas, state of Texas, or some other states, but majority of the states, for example, California, you are banned to have a public prayer on the school campus ground. So because of that, the schools in America only teaches the knowledge, which imbalances, or it raises a child who does not have any reference to any ethical standard or moral regulation. So whatever their desire of heart is, they say, we can do it. Just follow your emotions, follow your feelings, and do it. That's what the American schools teaching today, and it is it's pretty dangerous. Continuing with our definition of education, it's the process of it is a process of facilitating learning. Of course, all the education has to do with learning. It's a learning process. There's no doubt about it. As simple as that. Or the acquisition meaning getting it, of knowledge, skills, values, beliefs, and habits. If you just summarize these knowledge, skills, values, and belief and habits into these three: knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. That's how the Bible categorizes the domain of learning. Okay, did everyone sign that? Okay, please. Anyone? Okay, please go ahead and sign, everyone, and okay, thank you. Yeah, we are almost done. Continuing with our definition, the process of receiving or giving systematic instructions, especially at a school or university. We know this. So this is what we call education. by that definition. Or an enlightened experience. This is important for Christian education. It is experiential, meaning you have to have this experience that goes along with the providing the knowledge. So Christian education always or must have this experience part that comes with it. And then we teach and we practice as a pastor and Christian teachers, help them to put into practice. That's the very difference between the school teaching and the church teaching. Of course, many of the school teachings does require the experience, but in Christian teachings and the church, it is a must. It is a must. So it's according to the Oxford Dictionary. And thank you for your attention and thank you for coming. And again, if you want to sign the in for class, please come no later than 10 minutes of the first class, okay? So I'll see you guys next week, and have a good week. Bye-bye.